You step out onto the porch on a bright, heavy July afternoon, holding a glass of sweet tea, looking to sit for 5 minutes of hard-earned rest. Before your boot even crosses the threshold, you hear it. That low, sharp buzz. Within 30 seconds, 3 yellow jackets are circling the rim of your glass, and another 2 are aggressively inspecting the plate in your hand. You look up, and there, under the eave, is that gray, paper structure, growing bigger by the week. It happens every single summer. Most folks treat this like an unavoidable tax on the season. They walk into the big box hardware store, pull $40 or $50 out of their wallet, and carry home 3 heavy aerosol cans of chemical foam. You stance back. You spray the nest, the foam hisses, and the wasps drop. You think you've won, but if you stop and think about it, you haven't. A week later, the very same buzz is back in the very same corner. The store has you spending good money year after year on a temporary fix that never truly strikes the root of the problem. We've been trained to think that the only answer to a persistent problem is a costlier chemical. My grandfather never spent a copper cent on a store-bought can of poison. Yet his porches were quiet and his orchards were clear. He kept a small tin of plain white powder on a high shelf in the shed, a tool that cost him pennies and lasted for years. I keep up this Lancaster County place with my own hands, the way my people always have, and I use that same tin today. Understand this. The old people didn't have the luxury of expensive failures. When the wasps swarmed the summer kitchen, they used their wits and the simple things already sitting in the pantry. What I am going to show you is how to clear the wasps and yellow jackets around your home for the price of a single lemon, using a method that turns the insect's own survival instincts against them. More importantly, I will show you how to stop them from ever rebuilding in that spot again, which is the part nearly everyone misses. But before we talk about the remedy, we must speak plainly about safety. These are stinging insects, and they are not to be trifled with. A wasp or yellow jacket sting is a painful nuisance to most, but to some folks, it is a life-threatening emergency. Know your household. If anyone near you carries that severe allergy, you do not approach a nest. You call a professional, plain and simple. Even for those without the allergy, a large nest, a nest high up where you would need a ladder, or a yellow jacket colony burrowed deep down into the ground. These are not jobs for a homeowner. A man swarmed by wasps while standing on a ladder can fall and be grievously injured. What I am sharing today is for the smaller, accessible troubles that a careful body can safely handle with their feet firmly on the grass. Know your limits, and when a job is beyond them, there is no shame in calling for help. Now, look at the nature of the trouble. Why do those expensive cans of foam fail you every August? It comes down to basic biology. When you blast a nest with foam, you only kill the wasps that happen to be home at that exact second. The hundreds of foragers out in the fields and gardens aren't harmed. When they return under the eave and find their home ruined, they don't leave the property. They simply start building a new nest a few feet over. Worse yet, if the queen is protected deep inside the paper chambers, she survives, and the colony rebuilds with a vengeance. To truly solve the issue, you cannot use brute force from the outside. You have to find a way to get the remedy inside the nest, to the queen and the larvae, even if you cannot see where the nest is hidden. The old answer relies on a simple, soft white powder called boric acid. It looks like fine talc, it has no odor, and you can find it in any local hardware store for $3 a jar. It is a slow-acting mineral compound. If an insect touches it or eats it, it doesn't drop dead immediately. It takes a few days to work, and in that delay lies the entire genius of the method. Wasps and yellow jackets are greedy, opportunistic scavengers. In high summer, their bodies crave sugar to fuel their flight. If you offer them a sweet bait mixed precisely with a tiny, measured amount of this white powder, they will flock to it. They drink their fill, but because the boric acid is slow, they don't die at the dish. They fly home. Once inside the nest, they do what social insects are programmed by nature to do. They regurgitate the sweet liquid to share it with the queen and feed it to the developing larvae. The wasps become your workers. They carry the remedy into the deep, unreachable heart of the colony for you. Within a few days, the queen perishes, the larvae feeding stops, and the entire colony collapses from the inside out, silently and completely. There is another great benefit to this old-fashioned approach, one that modern broad-spectrum sprays completely ignore. If you use a heavy chemical spray on your eaves, it kills every creature that touches it, including the honeybees that pollinate your squash and apple trees. But a honeybee is a creature of strict habits. She looks for nectar in flowers, guided by color and scent, and she passes right by a dish of stale juice on the ground. The scavenging wasp, however, cannot resist it. This method targets the pest and spares our friends. Modern agricultural extensions have studied this very mechanism, confirming that boring mineral salts, used correctly, provide a highly targeted solution without ecological collateral damage. The strategy is simple, but the execution requires a specific understanding of how a wasp moves and drinks. If you simply pour this mixture into an open bowl, the project will fail. The wasps will land, their wings will get wet, they will drown in the liquid, and the secret chain of transmission is broken. A dead wasp carries no stories back to the queen. You must set the stage so they can feast safely and depart with their heavy cargo. Tomorrow, I will take you out to the shed, pull down that old tin, and show you the exact measurements of sugar and powder needed to make the mixture attractive rather than repellent, and precisely how to construct the feeding station using nothing but a piece of rubbish from your recycling bin. Step with me into the coolness of the shed, out of that blazing July sun. It smells of dry pine, old iron, and turned earth in here. The quiet smell of a workshop that has seen decades of honest labor. On this workbench, I have gathered the few things we need. Look closely at this powder. This is the pure boric acid we talked about. When you pour a little onto your palm, it feels incredibly soft, almost like cornstarch or fine talc, bright white and completely odorless. Do not mistake this for the harsh gray roach powders that contain synthetic chemicals or attractants. We want the plain, unadulterated mineral. Beside it, I have a simple glass jar, a bottle of cheap, sweet apple juice from the corner store, and an ordinary, empty aluminum soda can from the bin. That is the entirety of our inventory, costing less than the price of a cup of coffee. Let us mix the bait first, and I ask you to pay close attention to the proportions. This is where the first-timer almost always trips up. The common instinct of a modern man is to think that if a little poison is good, a whole handful must be better. That thought will ruin your efforts before you even begin. If you make this mixture too strong, the wasps will smell it or taste the bitterness of the mineral, and they will walk right away from it. Worse yet, if you put too much powder in, it will kill the wasp within 20 minutes, right there on the grass, long before she has a chance to fly home and feed the queen. Remember, we are not trying to trap them. We are trying to feed them a cargo they will carry deep into the dark of their nest. Take your glass jar. We will pour in exactly 2 cups of the apple juice. It should be the sweet, cloudy kind, yellow gold like autumn honey, smelling strongly of ripe orchards. To this juice, we add precisely 2 level teaspoons of the boric acid powder. No more, no less. Take a clean wooden stick and begin to stir. At first, the white powder will just float on top of the golden liquid, swirling around like dry flour. Keep stirring, slowly and rhythmically. Watch as the crystals catch the light, slowly dissolving until the liquid becomes perfectly clear again. It looks just like ordinary juice now, completely innocent, but it is exactly the strength we need to trick the colony's defenses. Now, let us construct the feeding station. Pick up your empty soda can. If you simply pour the liquid into an open saucer, the wasps will crowd the edges, push one another in, and drown. A drowned wasp cannot fly home. We need a container that protects the liquid from the wind, keeps the rain out, and gives the insects a secure platform to drink and leave. The aluminum can is perfect for this. It is dark inside, which wasps prefer, and the narrow opening keeps larger animals out. But an aluminum can have slick, polished metal sides on the inside. A wasp climbing down through the top hole will slide, fall into the liquid, and become trapped. To fix this, we look to nature. Go outside and snap a rough, dry twig from an apple or oak tree, about the thickness of a pencil and an inch longer than the height of the can. Ensure it is rough wood, with dry bark still clinging to it. Slip this twig directly into the drinking hole of the can so it stands upright, wedged against the bottom, and leaning out of the top opening. This twig is the bridge. It provides a rough, high-traction ramp. The wasp will land on the top of the can, smell the sweet fruit juice inside, walk down the bark of the stick, drink her fill safely without wetting her wings, and then climb right back up the stick to take flight. Pour just enough of your prepared liquid into the can to cover the bottom about half an inch deep. Do not fill it up. A shallow pool ensures they can only dip their mouthparts into the liquid, while their legs stay firmly planted on the rough wood of the bridge. Now comes the matter of placement, which requires a good deal of observation and plain common sense. Walk around your porch and your garden borders. Look for the flyways, the invisible highways the wasps use as they travel back and forth from the fields to the eaves. You want to place these cans near those roots, but never directly under a nest if you can see it, as they are often looking further afield for food. Set the can down on a flat, stable surface. And here is the unbending rule of the old people. You must set this can where no child's hand can reach it, and no dog's nose can knock it over. Even though this mixture is incredibly weak, we do not leave baits where loved ones can meddle with them. Tuck the can up high on top of a porch pillar, on the flat header of a fence post, or nestled safely inside the fork of an old tree limb well out of reach. Once the can is placed, your greatest task is patience. This is where many folks give up too soon. You will look out the window the next afternoon, and you might see 6 or 7 yellow jackets buzzing furiously around the can, entering and leaving. You might think, Elias, your trick isn't working. They are still alive and thick as thieves. Stop and think. That is exactly what success looks like in the first 48 hours. Every single one of those insects leaving that can is carrying a drop of that golden liquid back to the heart of the hidden nest. They are doing the heavy lifting for you, working quietly in the dark of their colony. By the 3rd or 4th day, you will notice a strange quiet settling over the porch. The frantic buzzing will begin to thin. By the 6th day, the flight path will be empty. The juice inside the can will have done its quiet, invisible work, and the colony will be no more, ended by their own hand. If the weather is exceptionally hot and dry, check the can after 4 days. The juice may evaporate, leaving a sticky, white-crusted residue on the bottom. If that happens, simply rinse the can with a splash of water and pour in a fresh half-inch of your bait to finish the job. You now know how to prepare and place the slow remedy that strikes the hidden root of the trouble. But we are only half finished. What about that active, heavy nest right above your kitchen door that is a danger to your family this very evening? You cannot wait 6 days for the bait to work when a nest is threatening your threshold right now. There is a second immediate method the old people used for nests they could see and reach, one that uses no powder at all, but relies on a simple law of physics found right in your kitchen dish soap. Let us step back over to the workbench, and I will show you how to prepare that immediate spray, and the strict rules you must follow so you do not end up stung or worse. Let us sit here on the bench for a moment and look at why these simple things work. It is easy to call these things old folk remedies, but the old people weren't working on superstition. They were working on practical science they had observed with their own eyes, even if they used different words for it. Understand this: nature operates on strict laws, and when you know those laws, you can accomplish with a few pennies what most folks fail to do with a whole shelf of store-bought chemicals. Let's look at the dish soap first, the quick method for the nests you can see. If you look at a wasp under a magnifying glass, you will see its body looks shiny, almost like it has freshly waxed. That is exactly what has happened. Nature coats these insects in a very thin, invisible layer of lipids, which is just a fancy word for oils and waxes. This coating serves a vital purpose. It keeps the insect waterproof so it doesn't drown in a summer shower, and it keeps its internal moisture from evaporating in the heavy July heat. More importantly, a wasp doesn't breathe through a mouth or a nose like you and I do. Along the sides of its hard body, it has a row of tiny microscopic breathing pores called spiracles. Under ordinary circumstances, water cannot enter these tiny holes because the natural wax on the insect's skin repels the water, causing it to bead up and roll off, just like water off a freshly waxed buggy or automobile. When you mix plain dish soap into a bottle of water, you are creating what science calls a surfactant. Think of soap as a bridge builder. One side of a soap molecule loves water, and the other side loves oil and wax. When that soapy water hits the wasp, the soap immediately grabs onto that protective waxy layer and breaks it apart, dissolving the insect's waterproofing in a fraction of a second. Without that wax to repel it, the water rushes forward by capillary action, completely flooding those tiny breathing pores along the sides of its body. The insect cannot draw breath, and it drops almost instantly. It is plain physics and biology working together, with no complex nerve toxins required. Now, look at the white powder, the boric acid we mixed into the juice. When a wasp drinks that bait, the mineral enters its digestive tract. Boric acid is a natural desiccant and a metabolic disruptor. Once inside the insect, it begins to dry them out from the inside, absorbing the moisture their bodies need to function, while simultaneously disrupting their nervous system. But because it is a mild mineral salt at the low concentration we used, it takes time to interfere with their cells. It is like a slow leak in a water barrel. It doesn't empty the barrel immediately, but the outcome is completely certain. This slow delay is the key that lets them carry it home to the queen. But I promised you an honest word, and that means we must speak plainly about the limitations of these methods. There is no such thing as a miracle cure that works in every single situation, and any man who tells you otherwise is selling you something. You must know exactly where these old ways fail, so you do not waste your time or risk your safety. First, let us look at the sweet bait. This method works beautifully in high summer, July, August, and into the early weeks of September. Why? Because that is the time of year when the colony is mature. The larvae have grown, and the adult wasps are foraging primarily for carbohydrates, sugars, to keep up their frantic flight energy. They are greedy for sweet things. But if you try this exact same sweet bait in the early spring in May or June, you will find the wasps pass right by your can without a second glance. In the spring, the queen is just establishing her nest and raising her first broods. During those weeks, the colony doesn't crave sugar. It craves protein, meat to feed the growing larvae. In the spring, they want caterpillars, spiders, and bits of carrion. If you put out apple juice in May, it will sit there until it sours and turns to vinegar. To make the bait work in the spring, you have to alter the recipe entirely, using a slurry of minced canned cat food or chicken liver mixed with that same tiny pinch of boric acid. You must match the bait to the season, or nature will ignore you. Second, consider the soap and water spray. It is a marvelous tool for a small exposed paper nest hanging under a porch rail or a window frame, where you can get a clean, direct shot at it. But it is completely useless if the wasps have built their nest inside a hollow wall cavity, behind your house siding, or deep inside a hollow tree. The soapy water must physically coat the insect's body to work. If you spray the entrance hole of a wall void, you will only kill the 2 or 3 sentry wasps sitting at the gate. The hundreds of insects inside will remain perfectly dry and safe, and they will become thoroughly agitated. Furthermore, the soap spray has absolutely no residual effect. The moment the water dries on the wood, the power is gone. Any wasp that was out foraging and returns an hour later will suffer no harm at all from the dried soap residue. It is a tool for immediate, direct contact only. Finally, we must talk about the weather itself. These cheap, natural baits are vulnerable to the elements in a way that heavy, oil-based commercial poisons are not. A single afternoon of torrential summer rain can splash into your bait cans, diluting the juice until it is useless, or washing the powder away entirely. A week of extreme 95-degree heat will dry the liquid into a thick, gummy paste in 3 days, meaning you must be diligent about checking, rinsing, and refreshing the stations. The old ways require a regular investment of your own attention. You are trading the convenience of a heavy chemical application for the safety and economy of a natural solution. And that means you must be a caretaker, watching the weather and watching your property. Now that you understand the science of how these elements work and the boundaries of where they can and cannot help you, we are ready to look at the final piece of the puzzle. I want to show you how to handle the aftermath, how to safely approach that nest in the evening with your soap spray, and how to apply that final crucial treatment to the wood that breaks the invisible scent cycle, ensuring that next spring, your porch stays quiet and the new queens fly right past your home to build somewhere else. If you look back through the old farm journals and household ledgers from a century or two ago, you will find that our ancestors were meticulous record keepers of the natural world. In the mid-1800s, long before the advent of massive chemical corporations, publications like The Cultivator and early regional agricultural bulletins were filled with letters from farmers sharing their successes with mineral salts. Boric acid itself was first isolated from borax in the early 18th century by a French chemist named Wilhelm Holmberg, and by the Victorian era, it had become a staple of every well-managed homestead. It wasn't viewed as a secret or a miracle. It was simply treated as a reliable, honest piece of chemistry that belonged in the household toolkit right alongside the vinegar and the tallow. The old people relied on these mineral solutions because they understood a fundamental truth about self-sufficiency. A good solution must be permanent, it must be cheap, and it must not ruin the land or the home in the process of fixing a temporary problem. In the early part of the 20th century, before synthetic nerve agents were adapted for agricultural use after the World Wars, United States Department of Agriculture circulars regularly recommended borax and boric acid preparations for the long-term suppression of structural and household pests, even today. Modern university extensions, from Penn State to the University of California's Agriculture and Natural Resources Division, continue to publish data confirming that boric acid remains one of the most effective, lowest impact tools available for managing social insect colonies. The science hasn't changed because the biology of the insect hasn't changed. The only thing that changed was the marketing, which taught us to prefer a flashy, expensive can that gives a dramatic hiss over a quiet, pennies-on-the-dollar powder that settles the matter for good. Think on what we have discussed today. We have looked at how a simple bottle of sweet juice and a 2-cent pinch of white powder can travel deep into the ground or high into an eave to solve a problem at its very source, completely hidden from your sight. We have seen how a few drops of ordinary kitchen soap can break down the natural defenses of an active nest in seconds, using nothing more than the basic laws of physics. And we have learned how a thorough scrubbing of the old nesting site breaks the invisible chemical trail, saving you from fighting the exact same battle in the exact same corner every single August. This is the real difference between merely managing a symptom and truly understanding the place where you live. When you buy that $40 can of chemical foam every summer, you are remaining a stranger to your own porch, reacting with force every time nature pushes against your threshold. But when you take these simple ingredients into your own hands, mix them with your own wits, and apply them with patience, you are stepping into the role of a true caretaker. You are practicing the old, measured self-reliance that built these homesteads in the first place. I want to encourage you to step out onto your porch this week and look at your pest troubles with fresh eyes. Don't run to the store for the quick, expensive fix that leaves you empty-handed next season. Go to the pantry, find an old tin or a jar, and try the old way for yourself. See how a little patience and a clear understanding of nature can give you back your yard, your peace of mind, and a few hard-earned dollars to boot. There is a deep, quiet satisfaction in solving a stubborn problem with a solution that costs next to nothing and harms no one but the trouble itself. It is a small way of keeping faith with the generations who came before us, who knew that the best answers are usually the simplest ones, waiting right there on the shelf, in the kitchen or the shed. Take care of your place. Mind the safety rules we spoke on and listen close to the wisdom of the old ways. I am Elias, and I am glad to share these things with you. Until next time, keep your wits sharp, your hands busy, and your feet firmly on the ground.